everybody. This is the Invisible Connections podcast again. I am your host, Sandra Dorenzi, and today is going to be asking about autism part 2. So, I'm really excited to do this again. I really liked doing this topic last time. I will say this isn't going to be every episode. It's mainly the episodes right now because I haven't gotten any requests yet for any other content creation. So if you would like to request another episode, please comment on my social media handles, which are in the description, or just let me know. I also decided to make these podcasts available on YouTube now, if it works, so I will post on social media once they are. I'm going to try to make them available on YouTube so more people can watch. The last thing I want to say is for next week, I am going to try to see if I can get my mom to co-star on one of the episodes. And that episode is going to be give a good perspective on what it's like to be a parent to an autistic child. She's going to give that perspective a little bit more. So for her episode, I'm going to be picking questions that are more about parenting autistic children to have her answer, because there were a lot of questions like that on Quora, and I want to make sure that we have some information out there for parents too. But I will say a lot of this is going to cater to adults that are on the spectrum or have a different invisible challenge. So we'll do some work with that. We'll do some work with, I'm trying to make this as versatile as possible for people. So now that we got the intro out of the way, let's get started. So the first question that I found on Quora was, should I still get an autism diagnosis? My mom said I'll only be a little on the spectrum, but she doesn't realize how much I am struggling and basic things are so hard for me. She thinks because I'm a happy kid, it means I don't have autism. So what I'm going to say about this, first of all, it never hurts to get evaluated. Let's say they say that you don't have autism. You might learn that you have some other invisible challenge that is making it hard for you to excel. And once you learn about what that is, you can find ways to accommodate it. But if you never learn what it is, then you're never going to be able to accommodate it. So I would say yes, it never hurts to get evaluated. I know people will say for some parents it costs money, but I know if it sounds like this person is still a child. Now, I don't know if that's true, but I know that if you are still a child, most schools are obligated to pay for evaluation. I don't think it works the same for private institutions, but at least if your child is at a public institution, they have to pay for testing. The next part is, I'm going to be honest, from this question, it might sound like the parent doesn't have a very strong understanding of autism and that it can kind of come on a spectrum. This goes back to what we talked about last time on our previous episode about there being a lot of stereotypes, especially with people asking about mental retardation being the same as autism. I think there are a lot of stereotypes that are not true, and I think parents can get confused by that if they have not educated themselves or if they have not had to take a course maybe in college or some other time in their life that informs them about learning differences. I think there's not a lot of information out there. Now, again, I'm going off of my own perspective for this question. So I would say maybe the parent doesn't have a very strong understanding of what autism is, and for that, I would say maybe try to encourage your parents to research it a little bit more and learn that there are all different types of people on the autism spectrum, and they all are different. So I think putting it in one category doesn't work. The other thing, too, part of the question was, she thinks because I'm a happy kid, that means I don't have autism. just because you are happy does not mean you don't have autism. Like, we have struggles, but we also have happy times too. And I mean, I will say I was a very happy-go-lucky kid, and I was on the spectrum. So happy does not equal no autism, and it is worth looking at. Last, I want to say is, again, I'll circle back to the point, if it's not autism, it might be something else, and you wouldn't know what that something else is unless you get evaluated and get some idea. Like, I remember for my evaluation, I had to read a passage. If the child ends up having dyslexia instead, if it's something to do with the way they're learning, there's not enough information in the question about the problems this kid is having. So if it did have to do with learning and they found out that maybe the words look jumbled up or something like that, and that this kid might have dyslexia, at least then they can say, okay, maybe they don't have autism, but like, we can do stuff to help with the dyslexia. I can't talk today. Anyway, we could do stuff to help with the dyslexia. So, I think it's worth getting evaluated because you'd get more answers. It might not necessarily be autism, but you'd get more answers. All right, we are moving on to the next question. What should I do? I'm going to France, and I heard France is not an autism-friendly country to go. So, I've actually never heard of this before. I don't know where this information was spread, but either way, I don't know too much about this one because I will say I had my own experience in France, and I didn't have the same problems. So, this might have been in like Paris, and that might be the distinction, but yeah, I didn't go to Paris. I went to France when I was 18. I was 17. They had a American Music Abroad trip for people who were in the choir at my school, and my music teacher nominated me to go. And we went to 5 different countries, and France was one of them. And we didn't go to Paris. We went to this small little town on the border near Germany called Colmar. I actually never had any problems in Colmar other than the language barrier. I tried to study French before I went there, but I was mainly a Spanish studier. I did not take French in high school. I went for Spanish because I figured Spanish is going to be a lot more common in America. So if I learned Spanish, that might be better. Now I'm still learning Spanish, but I know some words. So I think other than the language barrier, I think I didn't have any problems. I mean, I don't remember there really being any problems. So I think for the language barrier, I definitely would recommend to any autistics that are traveling to France, and this is not an ad, but I think Duolingo would be very helpful. For those of you who don't know what Duolingo is, it's an app that you can use that helps you learn different languages. You can pick whichever language you want to learn, and just take time beforehand, even if it's like a week or so. But I would say probably take at least a month if you're really planning it out far in advance to learn some of the language. And what I love about Duolingo, and again, this is not an ad, I'm just saying my own personal experience with learning languages on Duolingo. I like that it makes you speak, it makes you listen, and it makes you write. It gets you engaged in all 4: speaking, listening, writing. What am I missing here? Listening. Yeah, it makes you listen too. It gets you engaged in all 4 of those skills which you need for language. So definitely, please try to learn some of the language. Duolingo really helps. And if it's really hard to remember, I know that's a problem that I have. Write down common phrases in your phone. I mean, we have technology these days, which is amazing for travel. Write in the notes section of your phone different common phrases and their English translations. So that way when you speak, you can try to do that. Now, I will say, if you're going to Paris, my dad has been to Paris, I have not. He said that he actually took French, tried to speak French, and they just asked him to speak English. If that happens, I would say just go along with what they ask. However, I would try to attempt to speak the language. It shows a level of respect to try to speak their language. However, I want to wrap up this question by saying you definitely should not forego the opportunity to travel. I think it's really important for everybody who has the opportunity to travel. It feels intimidating, I know, especially with it possibly not being an autism-friendly country, but I never experienced that. I would say just be you, just do the best you can, and honestly, it's about having fun. Go do fun things, go into the town, grab some macarons. I highly recommend, if you're going to France, getting macarons. They are so freaking good. Like, I don't even think it matters where you get them. So yeah, I would say just lay back and have fun. This is supposed to be a trip where you're going to really discover yourself and discover what the world looks like from another perspective. So definitely take advantage of it. If you've already traveled before, hey, it's good to just add something to your list. Okay, so the next question is, why do autistic people seem childlike? So I'm going to refer again to the definitions that we said last time. We did say that autism was a developmental disorder. Because it's developmental disorder, our brains are not wired the same as people who are not on the autism spectrum. And because of that, it can seem like we are more childlike, but I must say we are still adults. We are still adults, and we still have the capabilities to live on our own and to have a job of our own. Some of us, I will say there's some of us who do not have the capability to have a job on our own, and that's where we're going to discuss more in a different question. But there's a good amount of us, and not the unemployment rate, there is a good amount of us that are capable of having a job, that are overlooked. That has been my experience and the experience of others as well. I would say I feel like I'm mature. However, I think there are certain things that have stayed childlike. For an example, once I get obsessed with an anime, forget it. Like, I got the clothes, I got the merch, I'm like watching it all the time. I think that's my childlike side. I think it's different for everybody. I think for me, I would be more childlike if I didn't have trauma back then. I got bullied a lot. There's a lot of trauma that I've had in my experiences growing up, and so I think I had to grow up very quickly in my experience. I had to grow up very quickly. I had to deal with a lot of other kids bullying me. I had to deal with admin not accommodating for me all the time, and my mom having to come in and fight the battle. And I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only autistic that's had to deal with that. So I think, I lack a lot of childlike qualities that I would have had because of my own personal experience. And there are times even where I'm hanging out with Craig where he's like, what did you do? Did you ever do this in your childhood? Or like, where's your like childlike quality? Like, bring it back. And, I've had to explain to him how hard it is for me. But I think it's slowly come back a little bit, which is kind of nice. The other thing that, I think the anime is almost like a hyper fixation for me if I find the right one. It's got to be the right one. And Craig was saying that he has hyperfixations as well. For those of you who do not know, Craig is my long-term boyfriend. We've been together for 7 years, and he has ADHD. I'm hoping he will co-star on one of these episodes, but that's for another time, and it's no time soon because we are living out of state from each other. But but he also has hyperfixations. I think that is a coexisting thing with ADHD and autism. And so I will say mine are very childlike. Although I will say the anime I just started isn't, but it's the way I go about it is very childlike. I'm getting the t-shirts, I'm getting the hats, I'm getting like all the stuff. And I was talking to Craig. So Craig is the one that actually got me into this anime. He got me into One Piece. We were talking one day and he's like, you've never watched One Piece, you have to start it. And I'm like, Craig, it's 1,104 episodes. Like, I'm never going to get through that. That's just so long. And he said, just trust me. Just trust me on this one. Just try it. So I listened to him. And I started watching it this year. I think I started like 3 months ago. And now I'm like an obsessed little kid with One Piece. I think it was like the Arlong Park arc, episodes like 30, whatever, that got me into it. And now I have not been able to put it down. And actually, I got so obsessed with it that I went to Hot Topic, got all these shirts and merch and stuff. And then not only that, but there's, in the arc that I'm in right now, I'm in Water 7. No spoilers for those that are watching. I'm getting a little bit off topic here. But they actually had a drawing competition for kids. And I decided it would be funny. I said, Craig, can I do this drawing competition? Then you can judge whether they would put it on TV or not. Because that's what they did. They put the winning ones on TV. And they got some One Piece treasure or whatever. And so I decided to start doing it. And I drew Nico Robin. And Craig was like, yeah, I think that would be on TV. And I was like, I kind of don't want to stop, though. It was such a relaxing activity. So then I drew Sanji. And then yesterday I drew Chopper. So, like, I'm drawing the characters. And some people will say that's not childlike, but compared to my other tendencies, it is. So, I don't know. I think it's different for everybody. I'm just talking on my experience. I think the way that I obsess over anime can be seen as childlike. Okay, we are going to move on to the next question. All right, we are on to the next question. Is it common for autistics to have a visceral aversion to authoritarian everyday life? Or authoritarianism. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. Authoritarianism. I didn't say that right. It's okay. You guys know what I mean. In everyday life. Is there a neurological or psychological explanation? So again, I think that this question is also dependent on specific experiences. I can say that when I was in school, I struggled a lot with authority. Mainly because a lot of the people who were my authority figures, especially in middle school and high school, and I'm not referring to my parents. I'm referring to the school in general, like the principals and admin and things like that. They didn't believe in me, and I'm basing that off of the fact that even in high school they pulled my mom aside and told me I wasn't college material. We would have to go in several times for my accommodations, and we'd have to go in for bullying situations. I could kind of get into, I had a very traumatic experience with bullying. I don't know if I want to open up about that here, but authority did not do what they were supposed to do. Like, for the principals, admin, without my parents having to come in. And I think that's the experience for a lot of autistics. So I think that's where this question comes from. And I think to a point, I do have aversions to authority. Actually, it's interesting. So my stepdad is a psychiatrist. And there's a test. I don't remember what it's called, but it's a psychological test where you draw a circle and lines, but you have to draw them in 3 different ways. And depending on which ways you choose to draw them, is it tells you about, or it tells them about who you are as a person, or just personality traits. Now, obviously, things like this are not 100% effective, but I did the activity, and he said, interesting, yours is very common, and what I can say about it is you are rebellious about certain rules. You don't like to blindly follow rules. However, you do like structure. That seems to be true for me, and I was actually surprised at how accurate it was. So I will say that's definitely how I am, at least. I don't like certain rules that seem very unnecessary, but I do like having structure. So if they are rules that help build structure, I think I am more okay with them then versus if they don't. So yeah, definitely something that can happen, and it all depends on your personal experiences. Okay, this is the last question before our halfway point. And this is going to have a very long answer, so we might be more than halfway. So the question is it difficult for autistic people to find jobs? Yeah, I got a very detailed answer here. So according to Golden Steps ABA, the unemployment rate for autistic adults is 85%. And this study was done in November 30th of 2023, so I don't know how it is in 2024. There were not any current studies from 2024. The most current one was from 2023. So I looked into this. I was like, well, why? Ooh, excuse me. Why is this happening? Why are autistic adults not in the workforce? The answers that I got are, there are a couple of causes. So the first one is lack of accommodations. The next one is autistic challenges with communication, social interaction, and those challenges can make the interview process really difficult. And actually, again, even with these things, only 34% of people on the spectrum feel well supported. This is from the same study, Golden Steps ABA, and they also mentioned some other reasons like the pandemic, discrimination, training gaps, coexistent. Up to 70% of adults have one coexisting condition with their autism. So this could be ADHD, this could be depression, this could be a coexisting mental health condition. That's what it said. Studies have also found wage gaps due to discrimination in the hiring process. So a lot of the time, these business people will discriminate based on based on the fact that there is a learning difference or invisible challenge, and there will be wage gaps because of that. As well as that, I think in general, okay, so this is the facts of it. This is the black and white of it. Now I'm going to put my perspective. I have noticed a lot of things. I think employers do not understand how to accommodate for these things due to the lack of education. I do not think there's enough out there about the spectrum and how it would affect working for jobs. And even if there is stuff out there, which there definitely is on TikTok, you don't know if employers are looking at those things. They are not having to do specific trainings on these things. You can't gain an understanding unless you have the opportunity to learn and to be educated. So there isn't an understanding in the workforce. It's a problem, and we need to solve it. There are just challenges that are faced on the other side. A lot of tasks that come naturally and easily to those who are neurotypical. Like, for an example, just conversations in general are hard for those on the spectrum, because we view things so differently than the rest of the world, and we have to interact in the way that's seen as typical, and that can be difficult. It's almost like, imagine having to conversate in a way that's different than how you do now. You almost have to have like a triple filter every time you talk. And I think that is something that is difficult for a lot of people on the spectrum. So these tasks that come easily to others do not come easily to us. It can almost feel like those exercises where they say, balance a ball, do this, do that, or pat your head at the same time that you rub your stomach. Like, those are hard things for some of us to do, and I think it can feel like that for... I think a lot because sometimes I'm talking about other people too, not just my experience. And I'm, obviously I'll never know how everybody else on the spectrum feels. However, I would say the general consensus is that those are hard things to do together. And these jobs have an easy time doing these things, so they feel like that maybe we cannot do as much. And it's not true. I think we can with accommodation. We just need that extra push in the right direction to help. So that's definitely something. And yeah, the pandemic definitely made it hard as well. There are certain industries that have flip-flopped. Education has a lot of vacancies. However, what I've noticed is they want you to teach a certain way, and it is harder for people with learning differences or invisible challenges to fit that mold. So that's part of it as well. So the vacancies are hard for people with challenges. And then there's the other aspect of it, the other side, which is there are certain jobs that are now becoming oversaturated because people that were filling these vacancies before left and changed what they wanted to do. So because of that now, those job markets are oversaturated. So if an autistic wants to work in technology, it's going to be hard to find a tech job right now because everybody is going from where they previously were to filling all of the tech vacancies. The other thing, I know there's a lot of factors. When are you going to be done answering this question? But there are a lot of factors. The other factor with the job market right now is the fact that there's this new uprise of AI. So a lot of the time people are being overlooked, even people who are qualified individuals, because of the fact that the AI is only looking for certain keywords and companies are using AI as a budget cut. These are important things to know about. And so I would say, I even am struggling with this today. I'm trying to get a part-timer and I have not had luck yet. However, I'm going to keep trying. But I cannot imagine how it is for other people who don't have the same supports. So I would definitely say to businesses, we need to try to diversify hiring. And the great thing about this is it's a place of pride to have someone with an invisible challenge on your team. They have a different perspective. They bring uniqueness to the table. So I want to implore businesses that are listening to this, please broaden out your job search. Well, I guess employee search a little bit. Be open to change because change makes things better. And what's great is you can also then say, we hire people of all backgrounds, of all different invisible challenges. You can use that as a marketing tactic to get people in the doors. some people might say that's cruel, but I actually think it's good to market the fact that people on the spectrum and other people who have invisible challenges can do things. I think that gets rid of some of these stereotypes of we can't, because I think we're so focused on the things that we can't do, that we're not focusing on the things that we can do. So I think by almost also putting it out there, hey, we hire people with invisible challenges. We hire people with difficulties. That puts a one-up on your business versus other businesses, because more people and more employees are going to come to you versus other businesses, because they know that you hire people with invisible challenges. So that is that question. Now that we are at the halfway point, I want to talk about our ad for today, which is for the GoFundMe. For those of you who do not know, I am board secretary of Teamwork Wins, and I am currently drafting up a program for, of course, the unemployment rate for autistics. We are helping people with invisible challenges in order to get jobs. And that is the program I am developing. But we have other people on our team developing other programs as well. There are programs for at-risk youth and other people who have been in the prison system, who are trying to turn their life around. So please, please, please donate to our GoFundMe if you can. And if you can't donate, please share our GoFundMe to other people so that they can donate to our cause. We really want to help these at-risk youth. We really want to help as many people as we can who are suffering with invisible challenges to see their strengths and to turn their life around and to be empowered. So please, please, please help us if you can. And here is the commercial for that.
We're back. My name's Adele Saccarelli Cavallero. I'm the founder and executive director of this wonderful organization, a foundation for awareness and change. And it's dear to my heart.
I'm Gail Kirshner, and I'm the executive co-director.
I am Sandy Durenzi, and I am the board secretary.
Hey, is Teamwork Win still running? Well, we're on hiatus for a little bit. Or no, during COVID, we had to stop a little bit. Over the years, I have received phone calls from people that have attended our camps, and now they're in college and in the workplace. And I talk to these people that have attended the programs. They're always so excited, and they express such great gratitude about what they learned here. Our staff and our volunteers just were miraculous. I know that sounds a little out there, but they really were. They changed lives.
Our new focus with our programs is with 3 different underserved populations. One is underserved youth who are at high risk for getting into trouble, having difficulty in school, and not being happy and successful. We also want to work with youth who have parents in prison, and we also want to work with ex-offenders who are trying diligently to turn their life around, but need additional support because of their invisible challenges.
I would really like to create a program for raising awareness and educating workplaces about the autism spectrum and hiring employees, as well as trying to spread education to workplaces about autism. I'm hoping to also help one-on-one in order to help them find employment opportunity. One of the other things I want to do is make one of these programs virtual, still in the works, but I think it would be really cool because then people from all around the world or different parts of the United States and different time zones would be able to join.
We have a lot to do about awareness and change. Our organization is really about looking at the perceptions as children, sometimes misperceptions, sometimes stories that we told as children, and kind of clearing them up, undoing those beliefs about ourselves that aren't so nice. And I hope you come join us. See you soon.
Okay. So, yes, like I said, please donate to our GoFundMe or share the videos with others, or share just in general the information. I will have the GoFundMe link in the description, and you can also find that video that I just played on my public pages, which will be in the description. Okay, our next question. What would your advice be to a 30-year-old adult who just got diagnosed with autism? So, my first advice would be seek out services needed that are available to you. So, there are a couple of different services. I did list one for children, and I think it's still good to talk about it. So, there are 3 main services, not including IEPs and 504s. The first one is DLA, which is Disabilities Living Allowance Act for children. Then we have Personal Independence Payment, or PIP. I'm going to be using the abbreviations as I explain them, so I'm telling you the abbreviations as I go. So we have DLA and PIP. And then Employment Support Allowance, which will be ESA. Not Emotional Support Animal, Employment Support Allowance. So, I got that information off of liace.com. So then I went to define each one for those who are trying to learn about services available to them. DLA is for children who show evidence of needing additional supports compared to their peers. You can also, if you have a child and who needs additional supports and they are going to a public school, that's where you can enforce an IEP, which is mainly what happens. This information was from the autism page. And then if you are past, 18, well, actually it's 16. If you're past 16, you can apply for PIP. PIP is for working age autistics who have a disability or long-term health problem. So it could even be an autoimmune condition that makes it hard for you to do your job. And you need help with daily living activities. This is a replacement for DLA for those aged at 16 to 64. And this is from the National Autistic Society. The reason I'm pretty sure that it's 16 is due to the fact that this is something in other countries as well. And the age of adulthood in other countries is 16. ESA is for people on the spectrum who cannot work or have limited ability to work due to their autism or another condition. But there are more rules for those who apply for ESA, and again, this information is from National Autistic Society. So to apply for ESA, you must be 16 and state pension age. You must have limited capacity to work. So it's a little stricter than PIP. You must meet certain rules, especially in the UK. You can't work, but certain types of permitted work are allowed. Can't be getting statutory sick pay. So those are the limitations for that one. So you have to find what works for you. The next piece of advice I would say is finding communities with other autistic adults. I know for me, this is something that's very helpful whenever I feel alone, and you can feel alone surrounded by people, especially if you are in an environment where it's only you. Like, you're in an environment, a social environment, where everybody else is neurotypical and you are the only one that is autistic. I think sometimes, and I say I think because I don't know about other people, but for me, and I know I've been using I think a lot today. Even I was a lot better about that last podcast. I will say, in my experience, I felt a lot more comfortable where I am now because my stepdad has some friends and their kids are my age, and I went to a birthday party and a lot of them were on the spectrum, a lot of people that were at the party, and I felt a lot more comfortable because I didn't feel like I was the only one. I think that feeling can get to you sometimes, and I think you can ask yourself, well, why can they do this and I can't do this? And I think we need to focus on what we can do. And that's what our organization, Teamwork Wins, is about as well. It's about focusing on what you can do, as what Adele said. And I think it's the same thing here. I think finding communities where you can find other people like you who struggle with the same things, or maybe they are doing well and excelling at something that you might find you excel in too. Finding communities of others helps you feel less alone. And again, knowing you're not alone when you're struggling. And don't feel ashamed for not being able to do the same things as other people. You are unique. My therapist stated it best, and I think I said this last time too, and I will always use the shapes analogy. She compared it to shapes. She said, I'm like an octagon. And there are octagons, there are hexagons, there are triangles, there are squares, there are circles. There are all kinds of shapes in the world. And that's what makes the world so unique. If everybody thought the same, if everyone could do the same things, life would be pretty boring. So the fact that we have so many different thinkers is what keeps life going. So don't feel ashamed that you cannot do the same things. Be proud. Be proud, because now you have a reason and now you can get better. We can work on those things. Knowing that you have autism helps you to be able to get the proper supports to be successful. So it is a point where there should be relief, there should be happiness. You can be success. You could always be successful, but now you're set up even better for success because you'll have the supports that you need to thrive. Okay, next question. How do I deal with autistic burnout when cooking? I like this question. So, I actually enjoy cooking, but I have had just burnout in general, and it's very hard to cook and clean and do all this work for just a meal when you are dealing with burnout or depression. So I would say find meals that are easy to make. So for me, this is ramen. I could eat ramen, I think, I'm saying I think again. I could eat ramen every day. No joke. Every day. I love it. Or noodle bowls in general. I love noodle bowls. I love ramen. And it's funny because I said last time that I cannot eat the same thing every day. I would bet you in like 2 months I'm going to say, no ramen anymore. I ate it too much. Like, that's the thing. I almost do that with food too. I go through a hyperfixation where I like eat the same thing. And then like I get tired of it. Anyway. But this could be ramen, this could be rice, this could be something that's easy to heat up. The other thing you want to do, and I know this is going to make me sound like a dietitian, and I'm not trying to go there, but this makes you feel fuller and requires less of you having to get up and make more. Find a meal that you enjoy that's easy, and if it's mainly carbs, add protein and fat. So if you're making ramen, add an egg, maybe add some cheese, add something. And yes, I know it sounds weird to add cheese to ramen, but I actually tried it because I saw it on the internet. People were adding like cheese to the bottom of it. I'm telling you guys, if you want a top-notch ramen experience, add cheese to it. It's so worth it in the end. But adding these things will help you feel full so that you end up not making as many meals, which will help with your burnout. Choosing meals that are easy to make, that are microwavable, or just, a quick boil and you're done. those meals are good because they require less cleanup, which will make you feel less burnt out. I would not recommend doing this forever, but if you're struggling with burnout, it definitely helps. It definitely helps. Okay, we got 15 minutes left, and we got 3 more questions, so I'm going to be moving on to the next one. Why do public schools ban most autistic people? So I actually know about this from my own experience as an educator, and I can talk about this a little bit. Private schools are not publicly funded. Because they're not publicly funded, they're not required to accommodate to special needs. Now, they can choose to, but they're not required. I think people ask this question because they almost get angry at the fact that it's like, well, why can't I take my kid anywhere? That used to be how I felt. I used to feel like, why can't I go to a private school and get accommodated for? Why can't I? Why can't I? You can ask yourself the why can't I forever. But it's not worth it in the end. The point is, the other problem with this, and this has come more with COVID, that I have noticed from the teacher perspective, is there are staffing shortages for those schools who choose that they want to accommodate special needs. There are shortages in public schools, so much so that we have people substituting for subjects they don't know how to teach. The teacher shortage in general is terrifying. And I actually stopped being a teacher. I could have, tried even harder to get a teaching job. And I did. I applied to some. But I also didn't sweat it, because the point is that the teaching right now is a very difficult thing to do because of the setup. First of all, the older adults the older generation that is in education right now, they had to take one test and I will always talk about this because I don't think it's equitable. They had to take one test and passed it to be certified, and that's it. Or some of them maybe took 2. I don't know how it was for everybody, and I'm not saying it was like that for everybody, but I have talked to people who are in the older generation of teachers. Older, not old, so don't come for me. And they have said that. They have said that they have only had to take 1 or 2 tests. Now, if you want to be a middle school teacher, you have to pass 4 exams because they want to fill as many positions as possible. So they changed the system so that you have to pass all 4 subjects for middle school. So that way, if maybe they're missing a social studies teacher, you can just fill in and they don't have to get a substitute and they don't have to pay somebody else. That's what they wanted to do. The problem with that is that they are spreading us too thin. Think about it as, like, if you go to be an OBGYN, it's a school, completely different industry, but imagine if OBGYNs also had to know how to be ER doctors and fill in for ER doctors anytime there's an issue. Or you don't even have to say ER doctors. Maybe they also need to be a heart surgeon. Like, it's ridiculous. They want to be an OBGYN. They want to be focused in one area. It's the same thing for teachers. For me, I wanted to be focused in science. And I didn't find out about the system being like this until my senior year of college, before I could change. I didn't have time to change my major. I had to just deal with the facts. So I took some of the certification exams. And I got very, very close, but I didn't pass all of them. I did pass the education one on the first try. However, the content ones, those are the ones that I struggled with. And before all of you say, well, you're not certified to teach then, I have always struggled with test taking due to my invisible challenge. Tell me how that's equitable. We need to make a more equitable experience for those that want to be teachers. We're not going to get anywhere with filling the shortage until we make it more equitable for those who want to be teachers. we also need to make the job force easier when they get in. I think all first-year teachers should have a TA, a teaching assistant. I know for the first year that I taught, a TA would have been a lifesaver for me because I did all the work. I brought stuff home. I brought stuff there. And sure, I had mentors that helped me. But at the end of the day, I put it all together. And that was something that was difficult for me. Now, I'm not saying this for people to pity me, but I'm saying it might be difficult for other people to go into the teaching field and do everything by themselves. And I think the older generation, the other mentors that I've had that are older than me, have said things like, this is how it is the first year, and be prepared. And I've even heard my mentors tell me, if you don't want to be a teacher, that's okay. Like, there's other things you can do with your education degree. Why would they have to give me that warning? Because of the teacher turnover rate being so high, because of these problems. So that's part of it as well. And so I think that these are issues that end up outwardly causing there to be less fillings for special ed jobs. With that, unfortunately, autistic people and other people with learning differences have to pay the toll, have to kind of pay for not having that. And it's horrible. And I think that we should live in a world where anyone who has special services or needs special services is able to get those. The public school system is also difficult. Oh, I read, why do public schools ban most autistic people? I just realized that. Well, I told you for private institutions and for public, it's really more staffing shortages, I would say. I will say the story I was about to tell is the other thing that happened is in my internship, there was a student, I remember, and I am not at all breaking HIPAA here, so nobody come for me. We're going to call this student Student A. They were really struggling to the point where they could not understand anything that we were talking about. They needed the learning support full-time, and the school basically said, well, there's not enough spots, so we're just going to put them in next year. So because of that, I had to fail a lot of stuff from him because it just wasn't where it needed to be. And I couldn't get him where it needed to be because he needed to be in full-time learning support. And there were too many people that I had to help. And my hands were too full. And I asked my mentor, what am I supposed to do about this? And there was nothing that we could do. And the system has let autistics and other people with invisible challenges down. The system has failed us. That's why I think for my career, I want to help these people because I know what it's like for the system to fail them. And it did. It really did. Okay, that's as much as I can answer for that question. Next question, what is school like for autistic people? So again, I want to say this depends on the person. I'm going to talk about my personal experience. I got into this a little bit with the other questions. First of all, inequity. And what I mean by this is, again, I had admin who did not believe in me. I had teachers who were mean to me, who I remember, and I won't say which teacher it was, but I ended up getting a lunch detention because this teacher did not fill my accommodation. I had the accommodation in middle school that a teacher would sign off on my homework book after I wrote everything down that I needed to do. Assignment book, planner, whatever you guys call it. So I wrote down everything that she had, except for one thing, and then she said, yeah, I forgot about this one thing, so if you could write that down. But she signed it before I wrote it down, so I forgot to. It was like signing a math test. So I came back in the next day, and she's like, all right, everybody give me your signed math test, because it wasn't that I failed it. It was more at the time, we all had to sign our math tests. We all had to have a parent sign it. And so I didn't have my parents sign it because I forgot to write it in my homework book, because she signed my homework book before I wrote it, not meeting my accommodation. And when I didn't have it signed, her response was, "You, lunch detention." So I had to sit. Oh my gosh, I remember. It was the worst punishment ever. And it's the only time I've ever gotten in trouble. I was a goody two-shoes. I had to sit in the cafeteria and watch everybody else socialize while I sat alone. Well, I sat with other people who had lunch detention, but we weren't allowed to talk, so we had to not talk while other people got to talk. And it was the worst feeling for someone with social issues, with issues with socializing. I was struggling to learn how to socialize with others. I was still in speech therapy. I was still learning, and they just were cruel about it. And my mom called, and I remember she yelled at this teacher. She's like, "Are you kidding me?" Well, maybe not yelled, but maybe like raised her voice. "Are you kidding me? She doesn't deserve to be in lunch detention for that. That was your job." And it was her job. It was her job to sign my homework book after I put everything in. So we have inequity. We have disrespect and bullying, not just from the school, but from other people, from students, and the teachers wouldn't do anything about it. Yeah, I had other I was the prime target for bullying because my mannerisms were so different that it made me an easy target. And a lot of people now have told me, "Oh, well, I would have never known that you were on the spectrum." And that's because I've had services and training, and I've had help to get better and to get stronger at these skills that a lot of people struggle with. Not everybody would be dealt that hand, but I explain that not to minimize my accomplishments, but to give you an idea of where I was at this time, at this age. Another thing is standardized testing. Standardized testing is hard for anybody, but especially those with invisible challenges. My IUP mentioned that I struggle with non-invisible tasks, with nonverbal tasks, and testing would be one of those. I needed extended time on all my testing, and I struggled with it. One of the things that I've said, and people think this makes me unqualified, but I'm telling you why it doesn't. I got an A in my math classes. Straight A's, other than geometry. Geometry, I did not do well in. But I did really well in algebra, and I got A's in those. When I went to take the Keystone, which was mainly algebra, but there were a couple geometry questions in there, I got 1 point from passing. I got so frustrated because I had to take a remedial class because I got 1 point. Who has to take a remedial class for being 1 point off from passing? But yes, I did. And then I took it again. And guess what? 1 point from passing. I got the same score, yet I was doing great in math. I had A's. I could explain it all verbally, but I just couldn't get my brain to do the nonverbal task. And that was something I struggled with in college too. I had to take calculus in college. Same problem. I talked to the professor, and the professor's like, "I feel like the door is right here and you're like hitting the door instead of going through it." And I explained, "I'm just not good at expressing this on a test." She gave me every tool available. She's like, "You know what? I'm going to try to put you in a private room where you can write on the whiteboard. Let's see if that helps." However, I will say standardized testing is a huge inequity for those on the spectrum and those with invisible challenges, because a lot of us struggle with nonverbal tasks, and it's just a very difficult thing to express our knowledge in that way. Okay, wrapping up, we're going to go to the last question because we are at the 59-minute mark. Would it be a good idea for there to be an autistic school for autistic children? I think this is a good last question. And it depends. I want to say it depends. First of all, it depends on the implementation and who's designing it. If we're going to have an autistic school, I want it to be designed by an autistic or by somebody else who has a different invisible challenge. It needs to be someone who has an invisible challenge. Why? And it's going to seem discriminatory, but I'm not trying to discriminate. I'm trying to say that they would have the perspective that these kids need in order to grow and learn. I keep saying I think. Neurotypical people can build a school for autistics, but they would have a harder time understanding how the autistic brain works. They would have a harder time understanding how invisible challenges other than autism, how other people think. That's why I want to see it happen by someone with these invisible challenges, because they know exactly what's needed and how the thought process works. And there are very successful schools built by neurotypical people, and it's possible. It's just harder because you can understand the technicalities of it. You can take all the education classes, but there's nothing that's going to beat a experience where the person has it and it experiences it on a daily basis. So that's my first thing. If it isn't going to be designed by someone who has an invisible challenge, then I think it should be staffed by people who are neurodivergent, because then they can provide that unique perspective. There needs to be neurodivergent staffing. The other thing too is that many different teaching methods should be allowed. So I'm going to wrap this up with one last point about this. Many teaching methods should be allowed because I think schools, a lot of the time, they act, well, they seem like they're going to allow many different teaching methods only to not. I think they want it to be like a specific way. They want it to be taught a specific way. But they don't tell you that. They don't make it seem like that. Or they do, but they want it in a specific way. They want it in specific communications. And it's, even though it seems like it's very generic and that you can fit it into any teaching style, it is a specific style that a lot of these schools want. And if you don't provide it, they don't like the way you teach. I'm saying this from experience. So when I say that many different teaching methods should be allowed, it works. That's what I did in my time teaching. I tried to implement as many different teaching methods as possible. And the reason for that is because you never know how your students are going to learn. They're all going to learn differently, especially if they're on the spectrum. The spectrum, there are so many different variations for autism on the spectrum that everybody's going to learn different. So you have to be prepared. You have to be adaptable. You have to be innovative. And I don't think that that's always accepted in the education realm right now. In the education realm, they want it a specific way and they want it now. And if you don't fit that mold, bye-bye. And that's what I experienced, and I did not fit that mold. However, that doesn't mean it didn't work. That doesn't mean students didn't learn. I had evidence students were learning. So I would say that if there's going to be a neurodivergent school for autistic children, or an autistic school for autistic children, I'm reading that from the question, then those things need to happen, and you need to have as many different teaching methods as possible if you want it to be successful. All right, this is my podcast, and we are wrapping up here. This is Invisible Connections. So please follow the YouTube page. If you're watching this on Spotify, please follow the Spotify page if you have Spotify and you're watching this on YouTube. Also, please follow me on social media. My handles will be in the description. And if you really want to help with Teamwork Wins and getting it off the ground, please donate to the GoFundMe, which will also be in the description, or just spread the word around. We are really looking forward to running these programs. All right, that is all. So I hope you all enjoyed this podcast, and I hope you all have a great day.